Ladies and gentlemen, hello, good evening. I am Dr. Mohammad Fahim, a geographer from Thailand. Today, on the occasion of World Environment Day, I will be interviewing Dr. Faisal Ahmad. Dr. Ahmad is an associate professor at the Ford School of Management in New Delhi, India. Dr. Faisal recently did a study on climate change and ocean diplomacy with respect to the small island developing state in the South Pacific Ocean. Dr. Faisal, on the evening, I would like to know, on the evening of the World Environment Day, I would like to specifically know about your views and observation related to climate challenges. First, I want to begin by asking you your thoughts on this year theme biodiversity. What is your views on that?
Thank you, Dr. Fahim. First of all, let me mention that the World Environment Day is being celebrated since 1974. The concept of clean environment, as we know, and the need for a socio-symbiotic relationship between human beings and the environment has gradually integrated into the need for sustainable development. You can recall that in 1987, the Brundtland Commission defined sustainable development as the development of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own need. Now, this actually called for a human action that conserves the environment and protects the ecosystem for the benefit of all. Then came the 1992 Earth Summit, which we all popularly know as the Rio Summit, where policymakers, think tanks, academics, and scientists, they joined hands together to save the Earth and protect its future. Now, we have the global goals, including the Millennium Development Goals, which were there earlier. And now we have the 17 set of sustainable development goals, which are to be fulfilled by 2030. Now, this year theme of the World Environment Day is biodiversity. This is a critical concern today, given the fact that the world is witnessing a series of natural disasters like cyclones. We have seen locust attack, even earthquakes are coming, forest fires are there, a recent one we have seen in some countries. And of course, the ongoing global pandemic, which is there, that is the COVID-19. Now, it is without doubt that biodiversity is the basis of the existence of the life and the life forms on Earth. Now, it is both about life on land and it is also about life below water. These are the two sustainable development goals. There are life on land and life below water. So biodiversity pertains not only to land, that is the terrestrial ecosystem, but it pertains to the marine ecosystem as well. So be it securing food, managing the food chain, smoothly running the water cycle or developing resistance to diseases, all these benefits to human beings comes from biodiversity. A continuous, a loss of biodiversity due to human actions, whether it is through deforestation or it is through overfishing or maybe any, undesired human interference in the marine ecosystem that we are witnessing today is of course a serious challenge for sustainable development. And I think this year's theme rightly calls for maintaining the nature and essence of biodiversity. In fact, we need more and more advocacy, not only in terms of multilaterals, not only which are actually coming from multilaterals, but also which are coming from the grassroots level. Now, grassroots level advocacy is actually missing when we come to talking about this type of climate change vulnerabilities. Also, I think more policy space is therefore need to be given to the relevant regulations for the protection of biodiversity and also to prevent its loss, that is the loss of biodiversity due to human actions. So I hope I could address the point that you raised actually.
Very nicely. But I would like to know also, as I know that you have carried out a study on small island of the South Pacific Ocean. What is specific environmental and climate change challenges did you find while you were study? Would like to share your findings, and also I want to know also how vulnerable these small island countries are.
See, of course, you're right. I did one study that was supported, by my institute. And that was on the, it was very interesting. I'll give you some little bit details about it. That was in fact on ocean diplomacy in the South Pacific. I mean, that was India's ocean diplomacy with the South Pacific islands. Now, when I started working on ocean diplomacy, I came across the point that one of the most important bases of this ocean diplomacy, especially when we are talking to about the South Pacific island, is not the diplomacy per se, but is about collaborations in terms of climate change challenges that these countries are facing. So I did one study, first of all, on the climate change vulnerability aspects as well, which was published in a journal. Now, uh, coral reef ecosystem, as I would say, it covers around 0.1% of the ocean, but it is going to support 1/4 of the life, on in water as well as in land. Now, one of the major uh, challenges before the small island countries are the small size. Now, this is very critical for us to understand, that small size and limited natural resources, which are the two key factors that define their fragility. That is what makes them fragile actually. And second is their remote location, which makes them very, very inaccessible and vulnerable also in terms of economies of scale. You can just look at these islands, I will suggest, on the world map to understand the level of their vulnerability, which can be attributed to the geographic location largely. For instance, you see islands like Fiji and Papua New Guinea, PNG. But even if you go a little further, you will find some remote islands like the Kiriba, the Solomon Island, the Nauru, Vanuatu, and a lot of other islands, even Micronesia and others. Almost half of the population in most of these islands, they are living within 100 meters of the shorelines. And even an excessive rainfall, if it happens in these islands, even an excessive rainfall, it can create miseries like a natural disaster. So that is the intensity, and that is the intensity of the challenge that these islands are facing. As we know that fishing and tourism are the main economic activities in the small islands, and therefore most often and more often you will find people in these countries face livelihood related vulnerabilities too, because there are a lot of natural disasters and all these things coming up. Now let me mention, as you have asked, let me mention about three specific key challenges that I will talk about. First is that I want to talk about rising sea level. Now, this is due to thermal expansion and global warming, and this drastically, it is affecting the ocean ecosystem and livelihood. For example, if you consider two of these islands, like Micronesia and the Solomon Islands, the sea level has risen up by almost 12 millimeters per year in the last 3 decades. Now, this is a very alarming figure. Now, this sea level rise is not a challenge in itself in isolation. Rather, it is actually bringing many other challenges along with it. For example, this sea level rise can lead to coastal inundations, and it can also help increase the incidences of natural disaster. So here I mentioned that what I can say that it's not that the international community is not aware about it, or international community is not making efforts for climate change adaptation and mitigation in the small island. They are of course making it. There are multilateral frameworks which are in place. These frameworks are like the Barbados Plan of Action, which we are aware about, the Mauritius strategy of implementation, the Samoa pathways are there. The work is going on. All these institutional frameworks are already in place, and they are making due efforts. But still, a global effort is needed by all countries to provide more policy space. In fact, it's the domestic policy orientation that has to improve, by which countries can provide more policy space to environmental and climate change concern. Also, one more point I want to talk about is about the precipitation patterns. Now, precipitation pattern is very critical and very, very difficult and very interesting to understand at the same time. We are seeing a very, very unpredictable and inconsistent change in the pattern of average annual and the monthly rainfall, which is experienced in the Pacific Islands. A key reason has been the El Nino southern oscillations. There is the El Nino effect. We all know it popularly like this. And a unique trend is seen in these islands, that is not only flood, but also drought, which is being experienced. Now, look at these countries, their geography. They are island countries, water everywhere, but still these countries start facing drought at some point of time. For example, I'll just give you one example, that a Marshall Islands, which is there in the South Pacific, faced severe water shortage due to the drought condition and had to declare a national emergency in 2016. Now, you can imagine the type of vulnerability these islands would be facing. Even Fiji experienced the El Nino related drought, which affected around 70,000 people there. And we have seen that there are storms, cyclones, hurricanes, flood, of course, which are very common in these islands. And the last point that I talk about is the coral reef damage. The coral reef damage is again, very critical. As we have seen that there are a lot, because of the coastal inundation, because of the sea level rise, there has been a huge impact on the loss of biodiversity in the ocean and marine ecosystem, which is leading to the coral reef damage. So these are the few points, Dr. Fahim, that I wanted to share with you as part of the challenge. And I hope I could address the questions that you raised.
Yes, yes. Dr. Faisal, I have another concern that I wanted to ask you. Would you like to throw some light on the disease and health aspect as well? Because I am sure that climate change is creating the health-related challenges too. And it is a prevalent in the South Pacific island also. What do you think about this?
Yes, of course. With the climate change vulnerabilities, with the sea level rise and all those things, a lot of such waterborne and vector-borne diseases are upcoming, and they remain a challenge in the South Pacific Islands. They also witness several non-communicable diseases. You know, WHO statistics suggest that, since 2012, we have seen that there are more than 40 large infections and diseases and pandemics outbreak which has happened in the small island of the Pacific Ocean. They are vulnerable to dengue, chikungunya, Zika virus, and also the vector-borne diseases like diarrhea, cholera, malaria, and filariasis. So these are some of the diseases which are already prevalent there mostly. But we should also take a note of the major cause of waterborne diseases. Now, this cause is attributed to the increase in ocean acidification. This is very, very critical and much related to what we call as what I just discussed about the coral reef damage. Now, ocean acidification is a great concern because the decrease in the pH value in the oceanic water, there are signs of ocean acidification is much visible across the earth now. So there is an increased CO2 emission that is now the biggest cause of acidification of the ocean water. Now this impacts the food chain immediately. Immediately it is going to impact the food chain because in these islands, the food chain is not, very much, segregated, or these are very much interrelated. The marine food chain and the terrestrial food chain, both are highly interrelated, very highly interrelated with each other. So it affects the food chain directly. Now, though there is some relief during the COVID lockdown related to, environment being improved and all that we have been seeing, but still it's going to be short-lived, and the vulnerabilities of these small islands are continuing for the simple reason that they have huge economic challenges as well, because they are fragile economies, they are low income, most of them are low income countries, so they continue to face those challenges.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Prasad. And I think one last question I would like to make for you is that you started with discussing about rise in sea level. We are seeing that this is causing huge suffering to the population in the small island. There are the big challenges coming up like climate, refugee issues. What is your observation about it?
Yes, you are right, Dr. Fahim. I think climate refugee is a very, very critical issue. See, these islands are, of course, experiencing, sea level rise. I just talked about them. And it is feared that some of them may even submerge under the sea. And possibly this will force their people to relocate to other countries, not as migrants, but as climate refugees. So, and it should not be, it should not be surprising to understand that these people are so vulnerable that a country like Kiribati has, their president Anote Tang purchased 6,000 acres of forest land in Fiji so that if the island is submerged, the whole population can be relocated to Fiji. And they are perhaps, I will say, waiting to become the world's first largest climate refugee ever. So this is a very, very critical challenge before us, and we need to be prepared about these type of challenges. Now, the severity of the crisis can also be gauged by the fact that the World Bank estimated that by 2050, there will be tens of millions of the climate refugees in the world. Though there is no number which has been cited, but tens of millions in itself a huge number by 2050 as the World Bank cites. The climate refugees are actually lacking protection within the frameworks of international law. This point is again very critical when we talk about climate refugee issues. Why? Because within the domestic political system of the refuge granting countries and even in the international legal system, we do not have a provision related to something called the climate refugee. We can have refugee related to political issues, or refugee related to largely economic vulnerabilities, or refugee related to conflict situations, which can be the primary reason why a person is becoming a refugee. But if a person is becoming a refugee because of climate change or because of some environmentally induced reason, we actually do not have in our international or multilateral legal system any such provision which can give a status to the such refugee as a climate refugee. So therefore, there is an imminent need of advocacy on this issue as well. Because there is no consensus, yet on whether climate or environmental challenge could be the primary criteria for granting refugee status, instead of conflict-induced factors or political factors or the economic vulnerability factors. So therefore, climate refugee, as I told you, that a country like Kiribati, the whole country has to be, once it is submerged, moved to Fiji. So we can imagine the intensity of the crisis. Now, this intensity of the crisis should also be reflected in the international and multilateral, legal system, where we need to do advocacy for inclusion of this issue as climate refugee as a major issue and as a primary reason why the refugee status can be granted. So I think the small islands are very vulnerable to these, and they are already facing these type of challenges. So
Thank you, Dr. Professor, for your insight. And I hope that we seek more policy space on environmental issues and look forward to a pragmatic outcome of such deliberation on the occasion of World Environment Day. Thank you very much, Dr. Faisal, for sharing your very fruitful and handy views on this occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fahim. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you very much for talking to me. It was really a nice deliberation.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.